So you want to learn how to draw eyes better? Well, look no further, grab a snack, grab a cup of coffee, because today I'm going to be talking about the anatomy of the human eye and sharing some of my personal do's and don'ts and talking about mistakes that people like me used to make when they were learning to paint. Let's get into it. The first thing you'll want to do is find a reference. It's a really important part of learning how to draw. If you go onto Google Images or Pinterest, there is an absolute plethora of eye reference photos, of any photos for any body part at that matter. And this is the one we'll use today. Let's talk about the anatomy. So, with eyes, I feel like a lot of us fall into this trap of drawing almonds and then just sort of putting eyelashes on it and that's that. But there's actually a lot more curvature and shape to the eye than you really think when you're learning to draw. So that's why I've just highlighted them in red so you can see all these shapes. And then eyelashes as well. Eyelashes are a dead giveaway. You can really end up making your picture look very cartoony if you don't look at the eyelashes properly and look in all the different directions that they're growing in, and depending on the angle of the eye, you might see some thicker than others. So yeah, let's just get into drawing now. So we're going to start off with the don'ts, and we are of course using the same reference image. So as you can see, I'm not reproducing the shape of the eye very accurately. I've done the whole almond thing that I was talking about earlier, just drawn an almond, not even drawn in a waterline or anything like that. It's not very accurate. And then the lashes, I'm just mindlessly drawing them in, not really paying attention to how they actually grow, which is just very cartoony and a little bit childish looking. So let's go into the do's. So here I'm trying my absolute hardest to recreate the shapes that I can see in the reference photo. Like I said, in this case, it looks more like a lemon than an almond because we have these two little openings at the sides of the eye, and I've also drawn in a space for a waterline, of course, and then I'm trying to position the iris as accurately as possible. We also have to think we're looking at the eye at a little bit of an angle here. It's not straight on, so try and think about that if you decide to use this reference photo. And then this was by far the most time-consuming part of my sketch, was the eyelashes, because it is quite a lot to look at and take in at once. So I had to really figure out which direction they're growing in, which parts were thicker and which weren't. It took a little while, and I did it very slowly, but I was quite happy with how it came out. And I just sort of finalized some things, and yeah, you can immediately see the difference in that. And the base sketch is really, really what's going to impact your painting. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first layer in the skin, and of course we're starting off with the don'ts. So I'm laying down a relatively dark color to begin with. I mean, it's not bad, but personally, I find it quite difficult to not make my painting too dark if I start off with a colour that's too dark for the skin tone I'm trying to emulate. Now, of course, in this picture, I wasn't exactly trying to emulate the skin tone of the reference, but I wanted it to be quite pale, and this is not. And yeah, it's just easier to paint dark over light. And so it's a bit chunky, a bit unblended, a bit sort of slapped on there. And then with these fleshy parts, of course, this is way too red. I don't even have a waterline outline really to draw from. So it's really hard for me to know what to put where. And it's just not very laid down very carefully. It's just a little bit messy. So of course, now we're on to the do's. I'm starting off with a very pale color, and it's immediately so much easier for me to try and mimic the shadows and lights on the skin, now having a lot more to work from in terms of drawing. So I've obviously left a space for the waterline there. You can see that's where I'm filling it in with this pink, which is not red straight from the tube. It's actually pink red mixed into skin tone. And yeah, I'm just trying to blend out with lots of different colors and shadows, and I'm not trying to make anything perfect right now because it is only the first layer, but I'm just trying to put down, the basics. Okay, so the white of the eye, Now this is something that I used to do when I was first learning to draw eyes. I just think that the white of the eye is going to be completely white, and it's a mistake I made for so long, and it's so silly. But I just feel like when we don't look at the anatomy properly, we can easily fall into that trap. So if you take any picture of any eye, so we're going to take the reference one and put it into an image editing program and take the dropper and do a couple swatches from the white of the eye, none of them, unless you're in super bright lighting, are going to be brilliant white. So here's just the brilliant white for comparison. Even the highlights, and the eye is a wet surface, so we're expecting quite shiny highlights on there, but if you paint the whole thing white, you've completely removed any opportunity to add any highlights. So absolutely start with a grey. So the grey on the left side of the eye is lighter than the grey on the right side of the eye, because we have a bit more of a shadow on that side. And I'm going to just leave that to dry, because then when I go on to do the second layer, I'm going to add in some white highlights. Of course, I'm just blending a tiny bit of a highlight there. But yeah, I think it makes for a really good base to add some white highlights. I could have even gone darker, to be honest. But this is the thing that really makes the difference to your work. Okay, so we're now looking at the iris. So on this Don'ts one, I've pretty much just taken the blue straight from the tube. This is Prussian blue, and it just looks so primary colory. It just, that wasn't a good descriptive word, but it just doesn't look natural. First of all, it just sort of looks very cartoonish and almost childish. And then I've just added a little bit of white there. It's just not very interesting to look at, And then again, I've taken this yellow straight from the tube. I didn't leave any areas for any lighter colours I might have wanted to add. I sort of just went all over it with blue straight away and just mindlessly dabbed some yellow on, and then I'm going straight in with black from the tube for the pupil. Now here I have taken Prussian blue, but I've actually mixed it with a little bit of yellow to make it a bit more muted, because this way it is way more natural looking. It looks way much more like the kind of blue we see in most human eyes, as opposed to, these blues straight from the tube, which we don't generally see. I mean, some people are really lucky and have eyes like that, but most of the eyes that we see are a little more muted. And I'm not just covering the whole space in blue straight away. I'm being very careful, and I'm placing colours down bit by bit and leaving that light white space in there, so that if I do want to add in some lighter tones like these greens here, I have the space and it's going to be vibrant. So yeah, and of course I'm not just using blue, even though this is a blue eye. It's bluey green, we can argue in the comments, but I'm using multiple tones here, so not just blues, I'm also adding in some greens as well. And then when we get close to the pupil, we actually are going to add in this grey colour here, which we see in the reference, or it's a little darker in the reference, and I do darken it up later, but it sort of blends the bright colours in the eye nicely into the pupil. So I'm pretty happy with that for a first layer. Let's go on to the second layer now. So I can't really explain to you exactly what I'm doing in so much detail, because I would be here for hours. But basically what I do in the second layer is really stare at the reference photo and look at lights and shadows that I need to improve. So for example, on the iris, you can see I've added in that detailing there. I'm adding in the little veins. I'm darkening up some things which might be too light. You can just see it become much more dynamic and 3D. Okay, so let's go on to eyelashes. So this pains me, but I've taken black straight from the tube, and I'm using a brush that's a bit too thick, or I'm at least not using the brush very carefully. And I am trying, and I don't think these are the worst eyelashes in the world, but they're just not accurate, and they just look like cartoon eyelashes. They just don't look like how real eyelashes grow, and that's a mistake I made for a long time, really not paying attention to how lashes actually grow from the eye and just sort of guessing. And that's a dead giveaway. Like, it pains me to look at this, what I'm doing here. And of course, just adding even more things not to do, just outlining things and adding in shadows where they shouldn't be there. So let's go ahead onto the do side. Now, I did start off and kind of mess up here because I used a brush that was too thick, but then I went onto a really thin brush. And I also was using black to start with, but I mixed it into a very, very dark grey, which I thought worked much better. So yeah, I'm just being quite careful about where I put them really, and just looking at the reference photos to see if I'm placing them accurately. And I'm only going to put a few down to start with. Now, these lashes, I did put them down on camera, but there was no point in showing the footage because my hand was in the way the whole time. So once I put the lashes down, I am now going to basically tweak, and this is the part where I go in with more shadows, more lights, edit things. I really step back and look at my picture and think, does that look right? Does that not look right? And there's a lot of things I tweaked on camera and off camera because it's just a process that goes on for a couple of hours or an hour or so while I'm just staring at it. And then this was the end result. So I think, I'm pretty happy with that for a study of the eye. And I also just want to add, if your drawings and paintings look like the don't side, that's fine. The thing with art is that it has taken me so long to be able to draw the way I can now, and I'm still far from being perfect, far from being super duper skilled or as skilled as I want to be. And I think with art, you always have to be really open to criticism, what others have to say, and learning. And of course that goes for you guys as well. If you have any criticisms or things I could improve on, then please definitely leave it in the comments, because I'm looking to improve my own art every day. Other than that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did find this helpful and enjoyable, please drop me a subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.